Good evening, dear listener. Find a cozy spot, maybe pull your blanket up to your chin and take a gentle sip of your favorite calming tea. Rest your head softly against your pillow, breathe in slowly, and let the day's worries drift away like leaves on a quiet stream. Tonight I want you to settle into a space of quiet curiosity, a space where the familiar begins to fade and the strange begins to whisper. Now imagine a world where courtship was less about swipes and more about awkward silences, where your chance at love was decided not by a clever bio or a catchy photo, but through a tangled web of riddles, riddled glances, and perhaps even a dash of danger. A place where the act of finding a partner was like waiting in a never-ending line, long, uncertain, filled with the rustling sounds of parchment and the impatient tapping of quills. Or perhaps it was more like trying to untangle a mess of cords, knotted, twisted, and frustratingly unpredictable. As the shadows lengthen and a cool breeze whispers through the cracks, I want you to feel the faint hum of a world that's just out of reach, a place where every gesture is weighted with meaning, every word a puzzle. Let the mist of mystery settle around you, softening the edges of reality, as if the air itself is thick with secrets and stories long buried beneath layers of time. And as your eyes grow heavy, you'll soon wake not in your familiar room, but in a realm where the air is thick with smoke, herbs, and quiet anticipation. A place where love's journey is far stranger, and perhaps just a little more bizarre than anything your modern world has to offer. Your skin prickles from the coarse, itchy fabric of the rough woolen blanket tangled around you, and the air smells thick, part smoke from the hearth, part something fouler, perhaps the lingering stench of unwashed bodies or spoiled meat left too long in the sun. Your nose twitches at the sharp tang of vinegar and burnt herbs mixed with the faint, unidentifiable odor of sickness that seems to cling to everything. The wooden floor beneath you creaks loudly as if protesting your every move, and the uneven planks press cold against your bare feet or rough hose. As you shift, the sensation of itchy, stiff clothing against your skin reminds you. This isn't your modern bed with its soft sheets and memory foam. No, this is a place where comfort is a stranger, and every surface feels like it's trying to scrape or pinch you awake. You notice the faint glow of flickering candles and the smoky haze that drifts lazily through the cracks in the walls, casting dancing shadows that seem to whisper secrets. The room is cramped, perhaps a humble hut, or a corner of a bustling tavern filled with clutter, a cracked ceramic jug, a bundle of dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, and a curious mask with a long beak resting on a shelf, as if waiting for its next grim duty. Your ears are immediately alive with sounds clattering from the blacksmith's forge down the street, the distant clang of metal on metal, muffled voices of merchants bargaining, and the occasional cry of a child chasing a dog through muddy streets. Somewhere, a bell rings softly, marking the hour, while the faint groans of the sick echo through the village, mingling with the impatient chatter of townsfolk rushing past your door. The air vibrates with a mixture of life and hardship, all under the watchful gaze of a sky turning duskier by the minute. And then there's the taste, if you dare to lick your dry lips, of stale, warm water from a cracked cup, or perhaps a piece of bread so hard that it feels like chewing on a stone. The wine you had earlier has long since turned sour, leaving behind a bitter aftertaste that no amount of spit can wash away. The textures of your surroundings, rough stone walls, splintered wood, coarse linen, anchor you in a world where comfort is a luxury, and every moment demands resilience. You might chuckle inwardly at how different this is from your smartphone's glow, your bed's plush embrace, or the simple pleasure of a hot shower. Here, mornings don't start with a soothing alarm, but with the crowing of roosters and the shouts of vendors calling out their wares. Your idea of a bad morning used to be a sluggish commute or a missed email. Now it's realizing your mask smells worse than the patients you're supposed to tend. An aroma of sweat, herbs, and decay that clings stubbornly to your face. With a sigh, you reach out and grasp the rough, cold fabric of your cloak, pulling it over your head and slipping into your stiff leather shoes. The movement is stiff, sluggish, like trying to wade through molasses, and every step sends a jarring reminder of how different life was when comfort wasn't measured in pillows or heated rooms. You stand up, your knees creaking, and glance around the room once more. Outside, the village awakens. You see figures moving about, the baker's wife with her rounded belly, a soldier sharpening his sword, children running through puddles, their laughter muffled but persistent. Peering through a small window, you notice that the houses are close, their thatched roofs sagging under the weight of years, the walls made of mud and wattle, faint traces of smoke curling upward. People cast occasional glances your way, some with curiosity, others with a hint of wariness, as if your presence is a strange new ingredient in their already complicated stew of daily life. A woman passes by, clutching a bundle of herbs, her face shadowed beneath a hood, and she glances at you with a mixture of respect and caution. A boy kicks a stone, his eyes flicking nervously to the strange mask resting on your shelf, as if wondering what shadows it might conceal. The village seems to breathe around you, alive, imperfect, tangled in its routines and rituals that no modern calendar could fully capture. And as you take it all in, the textures, sounds, smells, it becomes clear. This is not your world. Not the one of instant messages, sleek screens, or climate-controlled comfort. Here, life moves at a different pace, shaped by seasons, by faith, by necessity. To truly understand where you've just woken up, we need to step back and see the larger picture, the grander stage where this story begins. Because beneath all the dirt, the noise, and the chaos lies a world that's stranger than any modern nightmare, one that waits patiently for you to uncover its secrets. As you wake up, perhaps to the faint glow of dawn filtering through a small, uneven window, you can sense the air thick with the scent of damp stone, wood smoke, and the faint, lingering aroma of last night's stew. You're somewhere roughly in the late Middle Ages, likely between the 14th and 15th centuries, a period marked by upheaval, faith, and a fair share of superstition, all woven into the fabric of daily life. Imagine the landscape around you, a patchwork quilt of muddy roads, thatched roofs sagging under the weight of rain, and fields stretching out like an endless sea of green and brown. The towns are lively, bustling hubs where merchants shout their wares louder than a Black Friday crowd, but with more pigs than people, and the marketplace is a chaos of stalls, piled high with fresh bread, salted fish, bolts of cloth, and oddly, a few strange contraptions that no one quite understands. The streets are often a muddy mess, more like a giant slip and slide than a place for a leisurely stroll, with horses, oxen, and the odd stray dog weaving through the crowd, leaving behind a trail of manure that everyone simply steps over as if it's part of the landscape. Life here is a constant cycle, waking with the sun's first light, which is often heralded by the clang of a bell or the crowing of a particularly loud rooster, if you're lucky enough not to be awakened by the screams of a sick neighbor or the distant tolling of a funeral bell. Your day is filled with repetitive chores, tending the animals, fetching water from the well, a task that could be considered medieval CrossFit, given how many buckets you have to carry, chopping wood, and working the land, which is as unpredictable as trying to herd cats. The work is hard, repetitive, and not always rewarding, but it's what keeps the village alive. And of course, there are moments of celebration, feasts, religious festivals, and saints' days when the entire community gathers, often more for the chance to forget their hardships than for any particular reason. Speaking of religion, it's woven into every aspect of your existence. The church is the center of life, spires reaching high into the sky, bell towers summoning everyone to prayer, and priests who seem to know everything about everyone's sins. Superstitions are everywhere. Some believe carrying a handful of onions could ward off the plague, while others swear that sniffing flowers soaked in vinegar might keep you safe from evil spirits. Masks with long beaks, yes, the very same kind you see in stories, are believed to trap the miasma, or bad air, that's thought to cause diseases, a medieval version of mask-wearing, if you will. People are deeply superstitious, often more than they are logical, and their beliefs shape everything from health to politics. And speaking of politics, this is a time when kings, queens, barons, and lords rule with a mix of might, tradition, and the occasional bribe. Power is concentrated at the top, those fortunate enough to be born into noble families, while peasants toil beneath their shadow, often paying heavy taxes or tolls just to survive. The social hierarchy is strict, and your place in the world is often determined by birthright, luck, or a combination of both. Wars are frequent, whether between rival kingdoms or invading armies, and invasions can turn a peaceful village into a battleground overnight. Plagues come and go, sometimes wiping out entire communities, and leave a trail of fear and superstition in their wake. Yet, amidst all this chaos, faith offers comfort, an omnipresent force that promises salvation or, at the very least, a reason for enduring another day. In this world, life is a delicate balance of survival and superstition, of faith and fear. You might find it amusing or horrifying that some believed carrying a handful of onions in your pocket could ward off the plague, or that sniffing flowers soaked in vinegar was a safer bet than social distancing. Masks with long beaks filled with herbs and spices were worn to filter out the bad air, a strange precursor to modern masks but with a much more ominous appearance. And yet, despite the hardships, there's a strange charm to the daily routines, and rhythm governed by the seasons, the church calendar, and the whims of nature. Now, as you begin to understand the broader picture, it's clear that this is a world shaped by the forces of history, by the rise and fall of kingdoms, by wars that ravaged lands, and by epidemics that decimated populations. The political landscape is a patchwork of alliances and betrayals, all under the watchful eye of the Church, which wields spiritual authority that's often more powerful than any crown. Superstitions and religious beliefs blend seamlessly into everyday life, guiding decisions large and small. It's a time when science is scarce, and magic, real or perceived, fills the gaps left by ignorance and fear. So take a deep breath of this strange, smoky air, and let your mind wander through the cobblestone streets, the hurried markets, and the shadowed alleyways. Because, to truly grasp where you've landed, you need to see the bigger picture, the vast, turbulent canvas of a medieval world teetering on the edge of transformation, where survival depends on faith, luck, and sometimes a good sense of humor. And as you prepare to descend into the microcosm of daily life, the chores, the hygiene, the simple acts of living, remember, this is a place where reality is often stranger than fiction, and where every day is an adventure filled with surprises, oddities, and stories waiting to be uncovered. The first thing you notice is the cold touch of the rough, uneven wooden floor beneath you, creaking softly as you shift your weight. Your skin prickles from the chill, and you stretch cautiously, your limbs stiff from a night of sleeping in coarse linen or heavy wool that's more scratchy than soft, like being hugged by 1,000 tiny hedgehogs. Before you even open your eyes fully, your nose alerts you to the ambient smells: smoky from the fireplace, a faint whiff of dampness from the thatched roof, and the lingering scent of last night's stew, muddled with a hint of something slightly off, like a vegetable that forgot it was supposed to be fresh. You sit up slowly, feeling the roughness of your blanket or coarse sheets scratching against your skin, and reach for the water jar on the nearby table or basin. The water is cold, shockingly so, like a splash of winter's breath on your face, and you dip your hands into a wooden basin, splashing the icy liquid onto your face and neck, hoping to chase away the sleep and the dirt. No soap bubbles here, just plain water, sometimes with a handful of herbs or a splash of vinegar to mask the smell of unwashed bodies. You wipe your face with a rough cloth or a piece of linen, feeling the gritty fibers scrape against your skin, then toss the cloth aside, already knowing that cleanliness isn't about scent or smooth skin, but about maintaining some semblance of respectability, if only to avoid scaring the neighbors. In this era, bathing is a rare ritual, often viewed with suspicion or as a sign of scandal. The idea of soaking in warm water for hours or lathering up with fragrant soap is almost laughable. Instead, people prefer to sprinkle a little perfume, usually made from herbs, flowers, or spices, on their clothing or skin, hoping to mask the natural scents of dirt, sweat, and hard labor. Some even burn incense or herbs in their homes, believing that the smoke can purify the air, warding off sickness and evil spirits. You might chuckle inwardly at how your modern skincare routine, with its dozens of products and gentle cleansers, would seem utterly absurd here. Forget your 10-step routine. Here, survival is splashing some water, rubbing in a little herbs, and praying that the smell doesn't offend the church or your neighbors. The house around you is simple: walls made of darkened timber, the scent of burning wood curling through the air, and furniture that's seen better days. A sturdy wooden table, perhaps scarred from years of use, stands near the hearth with a few clay cups and a battered pitcher of water. A bench, some stools, and a rough-hewn chest complete the scene. The light flickers from the fire, casting dancing shadows on the uneven walls, giving everything a warm but slightly ominous glow. The fireplace itself is the heart of the home, smoke curling up through a chimney, filling the room with a smoky, slightly acrid aroma that's both cozy and a little oppressive. You can hear the crackle of burning logs, the faint drip of water evaporating, and the distant call of a crow or a neighbor shouting about chores or livestock. The sounds of the outside world seep in: clopping hooves, the clang of an anvil, children's laughter muffled by distance, and all of it feels alive, chaotic, and utterly real. Now take a moment to examine what you're wearing: a rough tunic or a heavy woolen shirt, often patched or frayed at the edges. Trousers made of coarse linen or sturdy wool, designed to withstand the rigors of daily toil. Shoes are stiff leather, uncomfortable and unforgiving, often causing blisters or pinches after hours of walking or working. Your body protests: coarse fabrics itching your skin, stiff joints reminding you that comfort was a luxury only kings could afford. You might find yourself scratching at an itch or shivering from the cold, wondering how people manage to endure such discomfort without the luxury of heated homes or soft fabrics. Your idea of a scratchy sweater or uncomfortable shoes is mild compared to the reality here. Wool that feels like hugging a hedgehog, and shoes so rigid that every step is a reminder of the effort it takes just to move. As you finish dressing, you might notice a small amulet or charm hanging from your neck, perhaps a talisman to ward off illness or evil, made of simple metal, bone, or carved wood. It's a relic of faith, superstition, or both, worn with quiet hope that it will keep you safe amid the dangers of disease, war, and misfortune. Moving to the table, your first meal awaits. A crusty piece of bread so hard you need to chew it like a piece of wood, accompanied by a slice of aged cheese, its flavor sharp and tangy, or a bowl of thin broth, more water than flavor, designed to stave off hunger rather than delight the senses. Drinking here is a simple act, guzzling from a clay mug, feeling the cool liquid slide down your throat, and trying not to think about how many hands have touched that cup before it reached you. It's a far cry from your fancy cafes or smoothies, but it sustains you through the day's labor. Before heading out, you might perform a quick prayer, cross yourself, or murmur a blessing, perhaps a simple invocation to Saint Christopher or a local spirit, hoping for protection from the dangers lurking outside. Some burn a pinch of herbs or incense in a small dish, believing the fragrant smoke can chase away illness or evil spirits. And if you're feeling particularly superstitious, you might even tie a small knot in your cloak or carry a lucky charm, something to ward off the bad luck that seems to follow everyone here. As you prepare to step beyond the door, you can't help but smile at the strange, slightly chaotic beauty of your daily routine. It's rough, uncomfortable, and filled with odd rituals, but it's also familiar in its own way, grounded in centuries of tradition, faith, and plain old human resilience. This is life in a medieval home where hygiene is simple, clothing is coarse, and survival is a matter of adaptation and hope. Enough about soap and sour bread. Let's see what happens when you face the world outside, with all its noise, dirt, and unpredictable surprises. The air is thick with a mixture of cold mist and the dry, dusty heat of midday wrapping around you like an invisible cloak. Your boots, made of stiff, cracked leather, crunch softly on the uneven cobblestones, splattered here and there with mud or dust, depending on the weather's whims. The ground beneath your feet shifts, sometimes a slick patch of mud after an overnight rain, sometimes a stretch of dusty, sun-baked stones that seem to shimmer with heat. You carry your tools, perhaps a small leather satchel filled with herbs, a wooden staff, or a set of iron keys jingling at your side, each item a reminder of the responsibilities you bear. The streets are alive, teeming with people whose movements form a constant, noisy river, merchants shouting prices, children squealing as they race past, soldiers marching in formation, and monks chanting or ringing bells from distant churches. The smell of bread baking from a nearby oven mingles with the pungent aroma of livestock, spilled grain, and the faint, ever-present scent of smoke rising from the blacksmith's forge. As you walk, your eyes catch glimpses of the day's work. A woman pounding cloth at her loom, a man repairing a broken cart, a soldier sharpening his sword with a rasping sound that echoes through the morning. The busy hum of activity surrounds you, each person absorbed in their task, yet all aware of your presence, an unmistakable figure in this intricate social fabric. Your role here is clear, though not always easy. You are the healer, the healer's assistant, the man or woman tasked with tending to the sick, the injured, sometimes even the dying. Your face might be partially hidden behind a mask with a long beak, and practical necessity, not a fashion statement, filled with dried herbs and spices meant to ward off disease. The mask's rough texture presses against your skin, and the faint scent of thyme and rosemary mingles with the sweat and smoke of the day. You carry a small bag of herbs, some vinegar, and perhaps a rag or two, tools of your trade, little more than simple items, yet vital for your role. As you approach the first house, you notice the wary glances from villagers, children peeking from behind curtains, and the cautious respect from elders. Children stare at you, eyes wide with curiosity, some half frightened, half fascinated, while adults shift nervously, knowing the task you're about to undertake. You are expected to examine the sick, dispense herbs, and perhaps burn contaminated clothing or bedding to prevent the spread of disease. The smell of burning herbs and the faint aroma of vinegar fill your nostrils as you prepare to enter a cottage, its walls darkened by smoke and thyme. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of sweat, illness, and something slightly metallic, perhaps a sign of blood or the iron in your tools. You feel the coarse texture of the rough linen of your gloves or the stiff leather of your apron as you work, feeling the weight of responsibility pressed down on you. The tasks are straightforward, yet strangely alien to your modern sensibilities. You might gently palpate a swollen limb, feeling the heat radiating from feverish flesh, or examine a patient's tongue, which is coated and dry as parchment. You listen to the coughs and groans, the rattling of breathing, and the distant shouts of children playing outside. Your work often involves burning contaminated clothing or bedding, an act that seems almost ritualistic, the smoke curling up like a prayer for health. You sprinkle herbs into steaming bowls of water, watching as the vapors rise, aromatic, bitter, and somehow comforting in their own way. Sometimes you perform a quick prayer or blessing, crossing yourself and mumbling a few words in Latin or the local tongue, hoping your words carry some divine protection. You may even carry an amulet or a small relic in your pocket, a talisman to ward off the worst of the illnesses. Your days are filled with these small acts, examining, prescribing, burning, and comforting, all wrapped in a routine that would seem primitive or even absurd to a modern mind. Yet in this world, every gesture holds weight, every potion is a prayer, and every patient is a reminder of how fragile life truly is. As you move through the village streets, you notice the different faces, some respectful, others skeptical, and the way your presence commands a mixture of fear, hope, and sometimes outright suspicion. People regard you with a mixture of reverence and wariness, as if you carry both life and death in your hands. You catch snippets of conversation. He's the one who can cure the fever. Or, stay away, he's been near the sick. Some think your herbs are magic. Others believe only divine intervention can save them. A few villagers whisper that carrying a small bone or a piece of charcoal in your pocket wards off evil spirits, an almost comical precursor to the modern placebo effect. The community pulses with activity, markets bustling with traders, farmers heading to the fields, religious processions winding through the streets. Every action, every ritual, every glance is part of a larger rhythm, one that has persisted for centuries, shaped by necessity, superstition, and faith. But behind every busy market stall and every wary glance, there's a deeper fear that shapes this world, a fear of unseen enemies, of plagues and curses, of divine punishment or cosmic chaos. To understand why people look at you that way, we need to step into their beliefs and superstitions, to see the world through their eyes, where medicine is often magic, and faith is the only true cure. And as you stand amidst this vibrant, trembling community, remember, your role is vital, and your presence is both a reassurance and a warning, a symbol of hope, or perhaps just another piece in the unpredictable puzzle of life in this medieval world. Now brace yourself. The next step will take us deeper into the fears, the superstitions, and the spiritual landscape that governs every act, every thought, and every heartbeat in this tumultuous time. It's in the way villagers clutch their rosaries with trembling hands as you pass, whispering prayers under their breath, as if the very words could ward off the unseen terrors lurking just beyond sight. You notice it in the tense silence that hangs heavy in the crowded churches, where the scent of burning incense and beeswax candles mingles with the faint, sharp odor of sweat and wax drippings. The heavy wooden doors creak open, revealing a sea of faces, some tear-streaked, others stone-faced, each person clutching a candle, a relic, or a prayer cloth, seeking salvation or at least some relief from the relentless dread. Today, the sense of imminent catastrophe is woven into every moment, a constant hum of anticipation that feels like the low rumble of distant thunder ready to burst at any second. The bells toll at funerals, their deep, somber clang echoing through the streets, a reminder that death is an ever-present visitor, just waiting to claim another soul. The streets are quiet now, but you can hear the muffled sobs from inside the houses, the whispered confessions, the hurried prayers. The fear is palpable, as if it were a living thing, slithering through the alleys and shadows, infecting every breath you take. It's a fear that has seeped into daily life, shaping every decision, what to eat, who to trust, whether to leave the house at all. You might see children clutching small charms, their eyes darting nervously, little amulets carved from bone or stone, believed to keep away spirits or disease. Some carry dried herbs in pouches, thinking that the smell alone could keep the miasma, the deadly, invisible cloud of pestilence, at bay. The miasma theory, that foul, rotting air causes illness, still holds sway. It's the medieval version of essential oils, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. People believe that the air itself is alive with sickness, like a malevolent beast waiting to pounce. So they hang strips of garlic in doorways, sprinkle powders of crushed herbs, and burn fragrant woods, hoping that these simple acts can repel the invisible threat. You might chuckle softly at the thought of it. Imagine trying to perfume away a plague with a whiff of rosemary and a prayer. Yet in this world, every scent, every gesture, every flickering candle is a small act of rebellion against the chaos of unseen horrors. Fear here is not just an emotion, it's a unifying force and a dividing line. The community is stitched together with threads of shared terror, sometimes strong, sometimes fraying. When the first signs of the plague appear, the panic spreads like wildfire. Accusations fly, some people blame strangers, foreigners, or even the unfortunates who live on the outskirts of town. Rumors swirl of witches and heretics, of dark curses cast by those who worship the devil or refuse to repent. The fear of the other is a powerful thing. It's the reason why, during outbreaks, mobs gather in the square, their eyes wild and accusatory, ready to lynch anyone they suspect of spreading the evil. Sometimes a simple suspicion is enough to ignite a crowd into chaos, fights, burnings, or mass exoduses. You've seen it, haven't you? The way a community can turn on itself, all in the name of survival. The fear unites, but it also divides, creating factions of believers and skeptics, of those who pray and those who hide. The most vivid example, the way people whisper about the plague doctors, those strange figures with the beaked masks seen as both saviors and sinister specters. Some believe they carry divine protection, their masks filled with sweet-smelling herbs to ward off the miasma. Others think they're harbingers of death, their long, dark cloaks hiding dark secrets. You've heard stories of people offering them gifts, tiny tokens, sometimes even blood from animals, hoping to appease the spirit or buy a little more time. Some believe carrying a dead toad in your pocket wards off the plague, while others think whipping oneself in the streets will earn divine mercy. It's the medieval version of essential oils, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. The community is always on edge, always watching the skies and the streets, ever ready to flee at the first sign of sickness or suspicion. They live in a perpetual state of tension, their fears fueling the rituals, whether it's a procession of monks chanting prayers or a family burning a figure of cloth representing their fears. These acts are small but vital acts of defiance and hope, rituals designed to keep the darkness at bay. And amidst all this, you are not immune. As a healer, a priest, a plague doctor, whatever your role, you are woven into this fabric of dread and faith. People look at you with a mixture of hope and suspicion. To some, you are a miracle worker, someone who might save their loved ones from the grasp of death. To others, you are just another person carrying the disease, or worse, a potential carrier yourself. They whisper behind your back, clutching their crosses tighter, whispering prayers when you approach. Sometimes, a mother will press a small relic into your hand, beseeching you to cure her child. Sometimes, a man eyes you with distrust, clutching his sword a little tighter, ready to defend himself if he believes your touch might bring the sickness. You hear the hushed prayers, the desperate murmurs, "God help us," or "protect us from the evil within." It's a strange paradox. You are both a symbol of hope and a reminder of mortality. In this world, even your presence can be a blessing or a curse, depending on who's looking. There are strange beliefs, odd rituals that seem almost comical in their desperation. Some believe that carrying a dead toad in your pocket could ward off the plague, an idea that makes you wonder if they thought the toad's croak could somehow dispel the miasma. Others thought that whipping themselves in the streets, flogging their backs until they bled, would earn God's mercy. It's the medieval equivalent of a viral TikTok challenge, only with a much higher chance of accidentally puncturing an artery or passing out from exhaustion. Still, these acts gave a false sense of control, a tangible way to fight the invisible enemy. You can't help but smile at the absurdity, even as the fear persists like an unshakable shadow. Fear here is like a gentle, persistent fog, clinging to your skin, slipping into your bones, whispering the worst-case scenarios into your mind. It's the reason people clutch their loved ones tighter, why they avoid dark alleyways, why they carry charms and relics, each one a tiny hope against the chaos. And yet, despite the constant threat of death, life continues. The community's collective fear binds them, but it also stirs a strange resilience. In the markets, amidst the stalls of herbs and relics, they still barter and laugh, sometimes nervously, sometimes with genuine warmth. The church bells toll, sometimes mourning, sometimes calling for salvation. You see it in the eyes of the villagers, in their hurried gestures and whispered prayers. They live with fear, yes, but also with a stubborn hope that somehow they will endure. Because in this world, fear is woven into every prayer, every superstition, every breath. It's a silent, ever-present companion, like the smoke from 100 chimneys, filling the air whether you want it to or not. And as you stand amidst this sea of trembling faith and trembling flesh, you realize that even in a world so saturated with dread, people still reach out, clinging to faith, to rituals, to one another. Beyond the prayers and charms, there are bonds that keep life moving, fragile, human, and surprisingly resilient. And it is within these fragile bonds that perhaps, just perhaps, there is a tiny hope buried beneath all the fear, waiting for the moment when the dawn finally breaks through the thick, smoky clouds of superstition and dread. In this world of rough stones, smoky taverns, and whispered fears, the bonds between individuals are the threads that hold the fabric of society together. Despite the constant shadow of death and the relentless grind of survival, you see families huddled close, mothers clutching their children, grandparents wrapped in coarse wool, all sharing the same small space with a quiet, unspoken reliance. Forget Netflix family drama. Here, your cousin might literally sleep on the floor 2 feet from you every single night, sharing a blanket, sharing stories, sharing the weight of another day survived. The hearth's flickering fire illuminates their tired faces, and in those moments you realize that their connection is both a fortress and a prison, a refuge from the chaos outside, but also a reminder of the obligations that tie them tight, whether in arranged marriages, shared chores, or the endless cycles of care. These close quarters forge a type of resilience, the kind that keeps the heart beating even when the body screams for rest or escape. You see it in the way neighbors help each other. An extra loaf of bread swapped for a handful of herbs, a whispered warning about suspicious strangers, a shared smile over a patched-up wound. During the day, villagers exchange advice and gossip in the marketplace, an endless cycle of lending, borrowing, and scrutinizing. A woman might lean on her neighbor's shoulder as she whispers about the strange illness that's spreading, or a farmer might lend a hand in plowing a stubborn field, exchanging not just labor, but a sense of solidarity. At times these bonds are fragile, like the brittle twine of a spider's web, easily broken by suspicion or greed. Because in a world where the plague can wipe out a village in a week, trust is both a lifeline and a gamble. And then there are the loves, those fleeting sparks that manage to flicker even amid the gloom. Maybe it's a secret glance across a smoky tavern, where a young man offers a shy smile to a girl with her hair pulled loose, or a promise whispered in the shadows, promising a future that feels as fragile as a blown-out candle. In this world, romantic gestures are simple but charged, an exchange of stolen flowers, a furtive meeting behind haystacks, a promise of marriage made over a cup of sour wine. Your version of Tinder? Try a glance across a crowded square, where the promise of a dance depends on whether the fiddler's instrument holds or breaks mid-song. The bonds of love here are often unspoken, carried on the fluttering of eyelashes and the heat of quick, trembling touches. But even in carefree moments, social hierarchy casts its shadow. Nobles regard the peasants with disdain, nobles' children sneer at the townsfolk, and the clergy, those moral authorities, walk a delicate line between reverence and suspicion. You, as a healer or a doctor of sorts, are respected by some and feared by others. To the noble family, you are a trusted advisor, perhaps even a miracle worker, whose prayers and potions might save their lives. To the common folk, you are a mysterious figure, cloaked in the same dark robes and masks as the plague doctors, both revered and mistrusted. Some whisper that your herbs and charms are divine, others believe you're just another instrument of divine wrath. The hierarchy shapes every relationship. A lord's daughter might blush and curtsy, while a peasant girl keeps her head down and offers a quick, wary nod. The clergymen, with their long robes and solemn chants, preside over community rituals, processions through the muddy streets, where the scent of incense mixes with the smoke from torches. You see them marching, singing hymns, carrying statues of saints, their voices rising and falling in a wave of collective hope or despair. On feast days, the town erupts into vibrant chaos, bright banners clog dances, and the smell of roasted meats filling the air. Children run wild, their cheeks flushed from the cold or the excitement, clutching sugar-dipped apples. Men and women gather around tables laden with bread, cheese, and ale, their voices loud and lively, trying to forget the ever-present threat of disease or famine. Yet even amid these moments of celebration, tensions simmer beneath the surface. Rivalries over land, disputes over inheritance, jealousies that flare during communal events. Rumors of witchcraft spread faster than the plague itself, accusations whispered in dark corners, accusations that can lead to a trial or a lynching. You've seen it. A woman accused because her goat bleated strangely, or a man pointed out because he's unusually quiet. These social tensions are as much a part of life as the daily chores, and they remind you that society is always balancing on the edge of chaos, fragile, unpredictable, and often dangerous. And yet, amidst all these conflicts and fears, the community persists. They gather for festivals, for religious rites, for weddings and funerals, binding themselves through shared rituals. You, as a part of it, are woven into these moments, perhaps standing at the edge of a procession, feeling the rough texture of the banners in your hands, hearing the chorus of voices raised in prayer, smelling the sweet aroma of bread and wax. These gatherings are more than mere tradition. They are lifelines anchoring the community to something greater than itself: faith, hope, and each other. Your role is complex, respected by some, distrusted by others. Every handshake, every shared meal, every whispered secret reinforces the delicate web of human connection. And as you observe the daily tapestry of lives intertwined by love, fear, duty, and desire, you realize that in this brutal, uncertain world, it is these bonds, these fragile, human ties, that keep the faintest flame of life burning. Because even when the shadows grow long and the fears threaten to drown them, the relationships forged in everyday moments are what remind you that despite everything, the human spirit endures, resilient, hopeful, and stubborn as ever. And if you listen closely, beneath the murmur of prayers and the clatter of daily chores, you can almost hear the quiet, steady heartbeat of a community that refuses to give up on connection, on love, and on the simple truth that in the end, no one truly lives alone. The light is soft, flickering from a cluster of tallow candles or a small hearth crackling nearby, casting shadows that dance across the uneven surfaces of bread-drenched platters and battered trenchers. The aroma awakens your senses, a faint, salty tang of dried fish, the earthy pungency of boiled legumes, and a whisper of herbs, rosemary, sage, maybe a hint of thyme, mingling into a humble symphony that promises sustenance and comfort. The textures around you are honest and tangible, the roughness of coarse linen napkins, the cool, slightly greasy feel of a wooden spoon, the grainy crust of a loaf that's been baked long enough to turn golden, but still crackles with every bite. Your hands might be soot-stained or rough from work, but here they're wrapped around a bowl of hot porridge or a plate of stewed vegetables, the warmth seeping into your palms as you prepare to eat. And what's on the menu? It's the everyday feast of the common folk, pottage with a splash of vinegar, thick slices of rye or barley bread that could double as a weapon if needed, a wedge of hard cheese, perhaps a boiled egg, and a handful of onions or garlic to sharpen the flavors. On days of abundance, maybe a slice of salted pork or a small fish, smoked, dried, or pickled, depending on what the market offers. Beverages? A mug of weak ale or a goblet of cloudy, slightly sour water, reliable, if not exactly refined, comfort for the daily grind. For the privileged, the scene shifts slightly. A roasted chicken, spiced with whatever rare ingredients could be smuggled in. Black pepper, saffron, a pinch of sugar, served with dried fruits and a splash of wine that smells of distant vineyards, not the muddy streets outside. But even among the elite, the table remains a stage of hierarchy. The host, seated at the head, carefully portioning out slices of meat, while the lower guests wait their turn, eyes cast down or eager for a morsel. You see the etiquette in their gestures, an awkward nod before passing a platter, a quick bow of the head when offered bread, a whispered blessing before digging in. Before the first bite, a brief prayer or a crossing of oneself, tiny rituals that mark the sacredness of the meal, an act of gratitude for the little that's been gathered or hunted, washing hands, A basin of cold water, sometimes with a pinch of herbs or salt, set aside for that purpose, an essential pause before the feast begins, a reminder that even in abundance, cleanliness is a virtue. The act of eating is deliberate, measured, a quiet acknowledgement that sustenance is both gift and obligation, a reminder of the hunger that shapes everyday life. You might observe a merchant hurriedly munching a piece of bread while haggling over a bundle of dried herbs, or a monk quietly nibbling at a loaf during a moment of respite from prayer. The shared meal, despite its simplicity, is never just about hunger, it's about connection, passing a bowl, exchanging a glance, offering a morsel to the youngest or the frailest. And in this world, food is a currency of trust, a symbol of community and status. Waste is considered a sin, yet no one is immune to the hunger that sharpens the senses. Every crumb is precious, every drop of broth a small treasure. The poor may scrape what's left of a bone, savouring the faintest taste of marrow, while the rich savour delicate sauces and sweetmeats, their tables laden with dried figs, candied ginger, and honey-coated nuts. You notice how the marketplace bustles outside, bakers shouting their prices, the smell of freshly baked bread spilling into the street like a promise, the clang of metal on metal as blacksmiths craft tools for the next day's work. You see the blackened ovens, the vendors' stall piled high with loaves, and the hurried exchanges that keep the wheels of this small society turning. The scene is a vivid patchwork of textures, scents, and sounds, wheeling carts, the soft murmur of voices, the crackle of fire, and the occasional burst of laughter or complaint. The table, in its modest way, becomes a stage for social hierarchy, for shared hopes and underlying tensions. The humble meal reminds you that no matter how hard life gets, people cling to their routines, their rituals, and each other, finding moments of warmth amid the chill of uncertainty. After the last crumb has been wiped from the plate, the town begins to stir. The faint scent of roasted meats fades, replaced by the distant sound of music, laughter, and the footsteps of those seeking entertainment or relief from the weight of the day. Because, as you've learned, in a world where survival is a daily battle, the table isn't just a place to eat, it's where life's small victories are celebrated, and the night's quiet hope is quietly renewed. And just as the last sip of sour ale slips down your throat, the city turns its face toward the shadows, ready for the next chapter, whether in celebration, work, or simple waiting for dawn. You step out from the shadowed refuge of the tavern, your footsteps muffled by the damp cobblestones as the evening breathes around you. Lanterns sway gently in the cool breeze, casting pools of flickering amber that stretch long shadows across the street. The smell of warm beer, mingled with the dampness of wet sawdust from the inn's floor, drifts in the air, curling with the faint aroma of burnt herbs from distant fires. The murmurs of voices, laughter, teasing, the clatter of mugs rise and fall like a quiet tide, each wave lapping against the worn stones of the town square. Here, amidst the muted glow, the community breathes life into its nights, caught between the comfort of shared routines and the shadows of ancient fears. You find yourself in the midst of the crowd, gathered around the open doorway of a bustling tavern. Inside, the air is thick with dust and the warmth of bodies pressed close. Wooden benches, battered and uneven, host groups of villagers and travelers alike. The low hum of conversation swells as a game of dice unfolds on a rough table, the small ivory pieces tumbling unpredictably. Each roll a promise of luck, yet often falling like a late bill, disappointing or hopeful, depending on your perspective. Nearby, a game of 9 men's Morris is played in slow, deliberate moves, the pieces sliding silently over the carved wood echoing a quiet, strategic patience in the midst of the noisy chaos. Kaneka's clink as someone raises a mug, the sound sharp against the murmur of voices that spin stories and jokes, often off-key but full of warmth. Someone's voice rises in a raucous song, a melody that wobbles like a boat on a choppy sea, the words spilling out without concern for harmony. Yet its melody, imperfect as it may be, binds the room in collective warmth. As you listen, your ears catch the strum of a lute or a rebecca, the strings worn but still capable of stirring the spirit. A fiddler joins in, their notes weaving through the air like a thread through cloth, inviting others to join in step. The simple dance begins, a circle of rough-hewn boots and worn skirts, moving in unison, each step a beat against the darkness outside. The sweat of effort mixes with the scent of leather and sweat itself, a sweetish reminder that even joy bears its own weight. People sway, turn and clap, their faces flushed with effort and shared delight. Sometimes a hand pulls you into the movement, and you find yourself caught up in the gentle rhythm, your feet tracing the same old patterns that generations before you have followed. Beyond the music, a wooden stage hosts a simple spectacle, an act of morality, a moral tale played out by villagers in makeshift costumes. The figures, clumsy but earnest, enact stories of saints and sinners, of divine miracles or moral lessons, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm that echoes both humor and reverence. The crowd watches in silence or bursts into laughter at the actors' awkward gestures, the scene a mirror of the community's hopes and fears. Nearby, a procession winds through the streets, candles flickering like tiny stars, their wax dripping down the sides of simple lanterns as they move solemnly, almost reverently, toward a holy shrine or a seasonal celebration. The air carries the scent of wax, herbs, and fresh-cut flowers, a mixture that seems to hold both the sacred and the mundane together. Yet not all that happens here is joyful or innocent. Sometimes the night's rhythm turns darker, quieter, an almost imperceptible shift. A group of flagellants dressed in rough robes march through the square, their whips cracking softly against their backs, their chants rising like a low thunder. Their procession, part penance, part spectacle, reminds you that fear still lives in this place, fear of divine wrath, disease, and the unseen threats that lurk in shadows. The crowd's curiosity pulls in different directions. Some watch with awe or skepticism, others whisper warnings or superstitions that dictate when to dance, when to stay silent, when to cross oneself. Nearby, a small crowd gathers around an executioner or a public act of correction. The scene carefully muted, no gory details, just the weight of collective morality pressing down, a reminder that the dance of life and death continues, often intertwined beneath the surface of these lively nights.
As a healer, or perhaps a figure of respect, you sense the mixture of awe and trepidation in the gathered faces. Even in moments of laughter, your eyes catch those who still carry the shadow of the plague, eyes that flicker with a mixture of respect and quiet fear. Someone approaches you with a quick plea for advice, a whispered question about the omens, or a curse that might hang over them.
You gently touch the edge of a nearby wall or a windowsill, feeling the roughness of stone or wood beneath your fingertips, and whisper a quick blessing or a warding charm, knowing that even amid joy, the spectre of death is never far away. The night deepens and the music continues, fiddles, flutes, tambourines, each instrument a heartbeat that keeps the darkness at bay. The laughter rises again, a little louder, a little freer, as the crowd throws itself into song or dance, seeking momentary escape from the fears that linger behind every shadow. The clatter of feet on cobblestone, the distant toll of a bell, and the faint, crackle of a bonfire remind you that this is a world of contrasts, life and death, joy and sorrow, hope and superstition. Here, in this moment, the community breathes as one, alive, fragile, and beautifully human. When the last song fades into the night and the final candle flickers out, the town's heartbeat slows. The distant echo of bells responds softly, a reminder that every celebration, no matter how vibrant, bears within it the quiet knowledge that all things, birth, promise, and inevitable departure, are woven into the same eternal fabric. You walk back through the shadows, carrying the warmth of the night's revelry, knowing that in this world of darkness and light, the cycle continues, forever turning, forever renewing. The faint scent of herbs and dried flowers from yesterday's offering still lingers in the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp soil and the faint trace of soap made from lye and herbs, reminders of the routines that sustain life in this small, humble place. Your breath slows and the weight of the day begins to drift away, carried by the steady rhythm of your heartbeat. Somewhere beyond the thin partition, the distant chime of a bell signals the hour, neither urgent nor distant, just a slow reminder that time continues, inexorably, like the turning of seasons in a calendar, without notifications, but full of the quiet promise of change. You remember the small miracle of birth, how a newborn's first cry echoes like a tiny bell, a fragile sound that holds within it the promise of new life. The midwife's hands, gentle yet swift, wrapped the tiny body in rough linen, whispering a prayer for health amid the quiet urgency born of knowing how fleeting innocence can be. The tiny face, pink and wrinkled, was pressed against a cloth soaked in warm water, while a whispered blessing filled the room, an act of hope, a plea for survival in a world that often feels both generous and brutal. Later, the moment of promise, an exchange of rings, a simple blessing at the church door, symbolized vows made not just of love, but of shared burdens. The community gathered, their hands crossed over bread and salt, their voices lifting a brief melody, an echo of unity, of promises whispered into the cold air. It was a fragile moment, held together by the warmth of shared faith and the quiet hope that life's small victories, be it a harvest, a child's first steps, or a moment of peace, are enough to carry us through. The passing of years brought the passing of tools, an old wooden loom, a carved chest passed from grandmother to daughter, each scar and mark a silent witness to generations of work and love. You can almost see her, her hands, firm yet tender, guiding your own, whispering tales of resilience, of patience in hard times. The smell of bread, cooling on a windowsill, the roughness of a staff handed down, the quiet weight of a family's history, all woven into the fabric of everyday life. Yet, in this quiet rhythm, death also makes its quiet entry. When illness comes, a sudden fever, a lingering cough, the room becomes a space of solemnity. The simple act of anointing with oil, the murmured prayers, sometimes hurried, sometimes tender, mark the end of a journey. If it's the plague's shadow that darkens the door, the rites become swift, the silence heavy, a reminder of the fragility of flesh and the weight of unspoken fears. As a healer or a witness, you stand between worlds, holding hope and accepting the inevitable. The earth claims its own in quiet graves, small plots marked with humble stones, or, in times of crisis, shared trenches where bodies are laid side by side, whispering the unspoken truth that life is a fleeting gift. When the final bell tolls, a heavy, sonorous sound, people gather in a procession, their candles flickering in the dark, the searer dripping like tears on cold stone. The dirt is soft beneath their feet, the graves simple but sacred, a silent testament that even in death community endures. Names are spoken softly during prayers at the table, memories cherished in silent reverence, a reminder that each life, brief or long, leaves a mark. A story woven into the collective fabric of this place. In stained glass windows and painted frescoes, death is often depicted not as an end, but as part of a divine cycle. Birth, growth, decay, renewal. Each moment a vital thread in the grand tapestry of existence, where a time to be born and a time to die is not a mournful refrain, but a quiet truth. And so, as you settle into the quiet darkness of your room, the rhythm of your breath syncing with the distant echoes of church bells and the soft rustle of leaves outside, you see that life, the small miracle of waking, loving and letting go, is repeated every day in countless quiet ways. Each bread broken at dawn, each kaneka raised in gratitude, each laugh shared in a fleeting moment of joy. These are the gentle affirmations that life, in its fragile beauty, continues. The city, the countryside, the world outside your window keeps turning unseen, unending. When the candle's flame dwindles to its last flicker and the night's silence deepens, remember this. The cycle of life is a gentle current, carrying us all, born into hope, living with love, and quietly, inevitably, surrendering to what comes next. Now, breathe slowly, softly. The darkness is not without comfort. The quiet breath of the earth cradles you as sleep beckons, and in that stillness the world continues, always, quietly, as it has since time itself began.